Hi, welcome to Our Time is the Garden. This is a series of nature writing workshops for women and non-binary writers of color based in Scotland and is in partnership with the Scottish BPOC Writers Network and IASH at the University of Edinburgh. This talk is facilitated by Nina Mingya Powles and is on the topic of small bodies of water. Nina Mingya Powles is a writer and zine maker from Aotearoa, New Zealand, and the author of the books Magnolia and Small Bodies of Water. She holds an MA in creative writing with distinction from Victoria University of Wellington. In 2018, Nina was one of 3 winners of the Women Poets Prize, and in 2019 won the inaugural Nan Shepherd Prize for nature writing and the Landfall Essay Competition. Nina is the founding editor of Bitter Melon, a very small press that publishes limited edition pamphlets by Asian poets.
I thought I would start by speaking to you briefly about the shapes and forms of nature writing and nature poetry that I have come to find most suitable for my work, I think, or rather the ways in which I've escaped the confines of form repeatedly in my work. And I'll also read a little bit from my poetry and also from an essay. And in my head, I've kind of been calling this mini talk Bodies of Water, and that will also cover the workshop we'll do together, which is really nice. But yeah, I wanted to start first though with the words of another poet, Victoria Chang, whose most recent book, Dear Memory, which came out last year, I think, is a really wonderful hybrid book, I think. It says essays on the back of the book, but I would say it's really a crossover between poetry and essay, or a kind of prose poetry. It's published in the US. I haven't got a copy with me now, but it's a beautiful book and I really recommend it. But in Dear Memory, she writes, "Maybe my memories are never really just memories, but are fragments of memories and stories from others. And that memory, for many of us, is shaped by motion, movement, and migration." So I came across this quite recently, like just in the last few months, but I feel like it really articulated something that I've been trying to put into words, or that I'm always thinking about in my writing, which is that I think the way that I write, and also almost anything I write, is shaped by motion, movement, and migration, as Chang writes. And yeah, so I feel that really summed up something for me as someone who grew up in a few different places and was moving around a lot when I was growing up, and also as someone who's mixed and grew up with several different languages around me, but ones that I don't necessarily have fluency in as an adult, but which I really feel a deep kinship with, which I've written about a lot. And I really feel unsure though about calling myself a nature writer even now, even after having kind of written a nature memoir. But I think I realize that so often I am constantly writing about landscapes and about place. And I'm really grateful to more recently learning about a broader definition of nature writing, and I include poetry in this, of course, as place writing, and writing that can include of the body, particularly urban landscapes as well as rural landscapes, food writing, one of my favorites, and and all other, writing on politics and climate destruction, of course, as well. And all of this is so connected. And so I think sometimes it's like maybe we are all nature poets or nature writers. For me anyway, it's kind of unavoidable. I don't like labels though. So for me, I'm trying to think of it more as a wide-reaching and shifting category or genre, one that we can really break open, whether we're writing in prose or in poetry. But yeah, I'm gonna, before I keep rambling about that, I am gonna read a little bit. I'm gonna just read a couple of poems and then another short excerpt. And yeah, as I said, I think everything I write really touches on the landscape, but these pieces maybe in particular do. So this is a poem called The First Wave, and I wrote it after there had been quite a bad earthquake here in Wellington, but I was far away. I was living in China at the time, and so I was, through the night, I was like listening to the online radio live stream of the tsunami alerts in New Zealand, and thankfully there wasn't a real tsunami. There was no destruction in Wellington, at least, and no one was injured, so it was fine. But that experience of being far away at the time of natural disaster was really memorable and anxiety inducing. So I got a poem out of it, at least. The First Wave. They request that we inform you immediately. You are standing on soft ground. The ceiling lights are swinging in the background. The waves crash, then dissipate. The first wave may not be the largest. This is a flow-on event, so do not go near. Do not stay and watch the land slipping. It has triggered other faults like a network of nerves, and the seabed has risen out of the sea. There are visible ruptures running along the landscape. This is a flow-on event, but the moon does not cause earthquakes. The ceiling lights are a typical pattern of aftershocks, and they request that we inform you. You are a visible rupture running along the landscape. Do not stay and watch your nerves slipping. There will be strong currents in the background. The moon has risen out of the sea. The first wave crashes, then dissipates. You are standing on such soft ground. Sonnet with particles of gold. Today, scientists discovered the origins of gold. The sound of egg noodles crisping up in the wok. The garden carpeted in kowhai petals. The way my phone corrects romati, summer, to rainstorm. The day after my grandmother died was white gold in color. A star explodes and wings are found among the debris, along with pieces of a character I never memorized, our only name for her, poor, a woman beneath a wave. Drift, she mouthed softly in English. What is drift? My mother translates into her language, not one of mine. I try to make myself remember by writing pour over and over on squares of paper covering the walls, so I am surrounded by the women and the water radicals they hold close. The tips of waves touch me in my sleep. I'll just now read a short bit from Small Bodies of Water, which is not poetry. That said, though, I think I'll talk about this more later with you in our workshop, but I think that kind of everything I write is actually rooted in poetry, and I am always, even when I feel like it's too hard to write a poem and I can't do it, and then I want to turn to prose instead, I am always thinking of bits of prose, very much like a poem, and thinking of them as things with physical shape and form, and the shape of them on the page. So yeah, I think I'm always writing somewhere in between. But yeah, this is from the very first essay called "A Girl Swimming is a Body of Water." Where is the place your body is anchored? Which body of water is yours? Is it that I've anchored myself in too many places at once, or nowhere at all? The answer lies somewhere between. Over time, springing up from the in-between space, new islands form. My first body of water was the swimming pool. Underwater, I was like one of Gong Gong's little silverfish with silver eyes. Like one of those he catalogued and preserved in gold liquid in jars on the shelf in the room where I slept, trapped there glimmering forever. It was here that I first taught myself how to do an underwater somersault, first swam in deep water, first learned how to point my toes. Here we spent hours pretending to be mermaids, but I thought of myself less as a mermaid and more like some kind of ungraceful water creature, since I didn't have very long hair and wasn't such a good swimmer. Perhaps half orca, half girl. To swim in Wellington Harbour is to swim in the deep seam between two tilted pieces of land that have been pulled apart over time. Repeated movements along the Wellington Fault have caused cliff formations to rise up above the harbour's western shore. Little islets, Makado, Matu, and Mukupuna, which punctuate the narrow neck of the harbour, are actually the tips of a submerged ridge that runs parallel to the Taniwha-shaped Miramar Peninsula. Home is not a place, but a collection of things that have fallen or been left behind. Dried agapanthus pods, the exoskeletons of cicadas, tiny ghosts clinging to the trees, the discarded shells of quail eggs on Popo's plate, cherry pips in the grass, the drowned chrysanthemum bud in the bottom of the teapot. Some things are harder to hold in my arms, the smell of salt and sunscreen, mint green blooms of lichen on rock, wind-bent Pahutakawa trees above valleys of driftwood. I'll leave it there with my reading, but and thank you so much, everyone. And yeah, if you do have any questions, now would be a great time if you have any. But also, I think I just, to finish off, I don't know, we'll have a break in a minute, but I saw a great tweet the other day from the poet and Professor Dorothy Chang, encouraging poets to create their own forms. And that really excites me so much. And I actually wouldn't say it's something that I've done, kind of to create your own signature form. An example, I think, is one that I've come across by Natalie Lynn Balderston, the London poet, who's created a form called Germinations. I think that's what it's called. It almost looks like a grid, and it's like lots of little stanzas. Each one is like a little triangle, and I think they can be read like left to right and right to left. It's so amazing. And that really excites me. And I think that's something we'll talk about more. But I think it can be even looser than that. Like they don't necessarily, doesn't need to be so rigid with rules like that. And I think what I'm saying is that I kind of have found that my form in both poetry and prose is like a body of water, in that it's fluid and shifting and very difficult to categorize. And I think that's a deliberate choice on my part. And yeah, I realized that many of my memories, as Victoria Chang writes, memories shaped by migration. For me, that's true, but also memories are very often shaped by water, different bodies of water and the way that water moves. And it makes me think of, I think, Toni Morrison's words, of course, all water has a perfect memory and is forever trying to get back to where it was. And I think this often captures what I'm trying to do in my writing, like very often tracing the outline of a landscape or a memory and letting myself follow the form and discover what it's going to be. Because I really often can't explain rationally why one thing is a poem or one thing is an essay. And I think it's that sometimes I kind of have to start and then find out somewhere along the way. Yeah, which is a bit like chaotic, I know, but it does happen that way sometimes. But I'll stop there because we'll have a little break for our workshop. But if you've got any questions, please do pop them in the chat. And thank you for listening.